Welcome, welcome everybody. Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, global community, and book all about helping women earn more and live better. I love the Motivation Monday Job Seeker Support Group. And I know that there's many of you who also love it because a few of you have gotten jobs and have come back. It just feels really nice to know that we are not alone in this chaos called life. And if you are new to our Job Seeker Support Group, welcome. The way that these work is I will always tell a little story or share a lesson that I hope will motivate us for the week. But then I'm going to pass it over to somebody in our community who has their own story to share about their job seeker journey. And we're all at different stages of it. Some of you are right now currently fully employed elsewhere, but looking, we won't tell anyone. We are recording this though, because most people do want to watch it after the fact. There are some of you who have been, quote, fun employed for a very long time and maybe need a reminder of why to keep going or pivot possibly. And here's the best part about, I think, what this is all about. It's about how we can help each other, because you may only know a couple of folks, but guess what? If you can tap into somebody else here who can then connect you to their network, who can maybe connect you to their network, right? But the only way that you're going to be able to tap into other people's networks is if you are very clear, or as clear as you can be, about what it is you're looking for. Does that mean you need to know the exact job description? No, you could talk about the problems you like to solve, things you're curious about. You can talk about the things you don't want to do or environments you don't want to be in. But the more direction and clarity that you can give to another person, the easier it'll be for them to help you. And I would say a really nice challenge for us out of all of this, if you do just one thing, it would be to get somebody else to post about you on LinkedIn. And the way you start that is by you posting about them. So after I do my little speech, and then we have our guest speaker, we're going to do breakouts. I'll give y'all a prompt for those breakouts. We come back together. If you met somebody awesome, which I know you will, because this is such a great community, and not just because I made it, but really truly is a great community, I encourage you to introduce that person that you met when we all come back together. And then afterwards, co-promote on LinkedIn. You don't have to have a huge following. Doesn't matter. It just takes one person to change your life. And we're all here. And look, there's 25 of us. So you have 25 opportunities for a life-changing experience here. Drop your LinkedIn, or if you're trying to get a business off the ground, put the link to purchase in there. Ladies Get Paid. We want to pay you. Okay. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Speaking of putting yourself out there, I'm going to share a story. Oh, Jenny Frischtick is awesome. Yes, Jenny is like super connector. Not to put her on the spot, but she's a really good person to know. So I'm going to start out by sharing a story that I think you will find pretty damn inspiring. I know I do. I have told this story before, but never in the job seeker support group. And it's also in my book. So if you've heard it before, you're going to hear it again. And there's some lessons to take from it that I think can keep all of us motivated, no matter where you are in the job seeker journey. After I share this story, I'll pass it over to Bernice, who is our guest for today, and then we'll do our breakouts. Okay, so here's the story. It begins in, 2016. I had just started Ladies Get Paid, and I get an email or a message on Facebook from a friend of mine from college who I lost touch with, and she said that she really hated her job. She was bartender, totally burnt out. I was surprised that she had gotten off path a little bit. She was so directed in college. She had a lot of student loans and moved to New York, and you got to pay your bills. So she's working at this bar, really not liking what she's doing, but she sees that I'm hosting a workshop called How to Get Unstuck in Your Career, led by another career coach. And she comes to the workshop, and she ends up actually working with the coach. And here's the thing. She wanted to go into some kind of public service, maybe run for office, maybe, but more activism in some capacity. But the question was, could she make a career out of that? Could she afford to pay her bills? And what would that look like? And she was really spinning her wheels, like researching, thinking, and then realized, you know what? She has to actually try, but not quitting her job full time. Again, she still has to pay the bills. So she was trying to figure out a way, how could she dip her toe in the water of civic engagement and explore it as a career beyond just having these informational coffee meetings, Could she actually take some action towards this? Try it on. And this is a truncated version of the story, just because the most important part of all of this is for us to start networking with each other, I know, but I find her so inspiring. So later on, she reaches out to me and asks me if she can support Ladies Get Paid in any way as part of her, just again, like building the action muscle of not just having informational interviews and not just researching these careers, but actually trying on civic engagement as a role, building her resume, but without quitting her job full time. And I said, yes. She ended up working with me and somebody else in my community to help develop a workshop around civic engagement. This was post 2016 presidential election. A lot of people wanting to figure out how they could get politically involved, but not really understanding what is the system. And so we worked together on that. She got involved in some other things. Fast forward probably about a year, I host a town hall called Reinvention. And in my town halls, I ask a certain number of women to share their stories first as it relates to the theme. Then I open it up to the room and I say, who here has a reinvention story or a question? Now, I didn't ask this woman to share because she hadn't yet reinvented herself. She was just trying things on for size. And but when I opened it up to the room, and this is back in person when there was actual rooms and not Zoom rooms, she raised her hand and she said, and this is in front of a room of probably 100 people. She stood up and she said, I have always wanted to run for office, but you know what? People who look like me, she was Hispanic, people who look like me, and where I'm from, we don't run for office. But you know what? I'm going to do it. I am going to run for office. And the whole room erupted in cheers. And I start crying because here's the thing, and this is what is, I think, most profound for all of us to remember. Here is a person declaring herself, her intention to do something that most likely she was not going to get. It's one thing for us all to be applying for jobs, but to run for office, and all that it requires to do that. And she was going to be running against a guy who'd been in office for years and years and years. In fact, I think he was one of the most powerful, Jenny, I know who knows who I'm talking about here. I'm seeing her smiling and nodding. One of the most powerful people in Washington, okay? Older white dude, right? And then don't give away the punchline, Bernice. But here again, she is saying in front of 100 people, I am going to run for office. Listen, I had wanted to be an actress when I was in high school. My ego can't handle rejection like that. I'm too chicken shit to even audition for something, okay? Because of the lack of control. This is a person who's going to run for office. Again, what is required to do that? So regardless of me crying was not about, oh, is she going to win or not win? It was just the public declaration of intent to do something that was so fraught with risk. That was so profound, especially knowing her from the 2 years prior of being at the bar. Now, a year later, she wins and becomes the youngest congresswoman ever. And yes, it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is a Ladies Get Paid member. I want you all to remember that. So regardless of what you think of her politics or politics in general, this is a story of an individual, a person like all of us, who messages me on Facebook and says, I am unhappy in my career and I don't know what to do. But she had the wherewithal to show the fuck up. She shows up to these workshops. She hires this career coach. She continues to self-educate. She reaches out to me and says, hey, I want to support you. What can I do for Ladies Get Paid? She keeps showing up. And again, this is not a person who has some kind of privilege who can just quit her job. The whole time she's doing this, she is very much recognizing that she needs to pay her bills and her student loans. There's probably a lot more lessons you can pull from her. But the one I just always remember is the fact that she continually put herself out there and also did not just, again, have those informational interviews and do the research. That is the place to begin, but you have to really take action. You have to get involved. You have to, unfortunately, volunteer oftentimes, right? People aren't going to pay you, especially if you're new at something. So if you are in a pivot position right now where you need to be building your resume and building credibility and building contacts, you might have to do some stuff for free. And that is anti-Ladies Get Paid. I know, but we're looking at the long game here. Also, it's not just about what you're doing today, but how you're going to use today. Okay. Yeah. So I know some of you have heard that story before, but I just can't believe it. And I still laugh at myself sometimes when I think about the fact that she was at the reinvention town hall, but I did not ask her to speak. So I'm like, she hadn't done anything. Most famous person in the room, but not at that time. So if she can do it, we can all do a small fraction of it. And that was my story for today. I am now going to hand it over to a lovely woman in our community who will share her story. I think it has something to do with negotiation, maybe, which might be a few steps ahead of some folks here, maybe who aren't yet in the position where they can negotiate. But there are lessons to be taken from anything and everything at all points of our journeys. And just to feel good on Monday and remind us that like we're doing it. And it takes work. It takes work and self-education. Bernice, I'm going to have you join me here. I would love for you to introduce yourself and talk to us a little bit about your kind of job seeker journey and ladies get paid, very much ladies get paid moment.
Yeah.
Hold on,
Berenice,
you're
I'm based.
muted. Wait, even though it says you're not
Yeah.
muted, your sound is
Huh.
paused.
Maybe
So
it's my
just make
AirPods.
sure
Let me
that
just.
is. Oh, you can hear her. You know what? I'm gonna undo my thing. You wanna this happened last time. Audio. Bernice, do you want to talk a little bit? Yeah, so it's on. So y'all, hold on. You can hear. So weird on my end. MacBook Air. This totally happened last time. All right. I am going to make you a co-host. This is so freaking weird. Literally, the sound was totally fine. I could do recording in progress. All right, Monday mornings. Welcome.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Berenice. I'm based here in LA. And maybe somewhat like AOC, I haven't really had the typical career journey. I grew up in the hood in LA. Had to work my way through college. I actually had a baby really young too when I was 21. At that point, I had no sense of direction, didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew, hey, I probably should go to college so that I can have better chances of being a better provider for that baby, right? So up until that point, I had really been dilly-dallying, just working retail jobs. At that point, I was like an assistant store manager at a retail store. Not happy, not fulfilled, getting paid very crappy wages, right? Working weekends, working late, not fun. So I think that was like my pivotal moment where I was like, hey, I need to do better. I then actually began trying at school. I was actually initially going to school to become a social worker. And then I realized, hey, like maybe the emotional burden that kind of puts on you is just a little too much for me. I had my own healing to do. So I decided to change careers and I shifted over to a healthcare administration major, mostly because my prereq work already aligned with that major and I wouldn't need to lose more than a semester. So I made that change, kept working crappy jobs. So I worked retail, grocery store, I did sales for like general merchandising, none of that like high pay software sales or anything like that. I sold literal dollar store merchandise. So I was selling stuff that was like 30 cents a piece. Yeah, worked at a gym for like a week, quit because of the bro culture and harassment. Not a great start to my career journey, right? But I took whatever job I could to pay the bills. So finally, my last year in college, I began an internship with Kaiser, unpaid, right? Like you were saying, Claire, sometimes you just got to take the unpaid jobs just to get something on your resume. So that was definitely it for me. Unpaid, minimum 20 hours. So I had to balance that with being a mom and finding income elsewhere. So yeah, did that for a semester. And then I heard about a paid internship at a health insurance company based in Long Beach. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I don't have a background in purchasing, which is what I ended up doing. So I said, you know what, they're looking for internship interns. They don't expect me to have experience. I'm just going to go for it, even though I had nothing to like that I thought really transferred. But when you think about it, like I've done sales, I've been on the customer service side of things, right? And so it's like, just always keep in mind your soft and transferable skills, because you might not think it really aligns on paper, but it does, especially for those more experienced leaders that probably are the hiring managers. They can see how your backgrounds might align. And maybe you don't know the technicalities of a role, right? But if you have certain skills, everyone is coachable, everyone's trainable, we're all capable of learning. So always keep that in mind in your search. Go for it, like just do it. I think we regret more the chances we don't take on ourselves than when we actually put ourselves out there and you get a rejection. Because, like Claire, you were mentioning at the beginning of the call, it's just practice. Next time, maybe I'll do this different. So that's how I really shifted into this sourcing type of role. So I began there as an intern. I got randomly placed into the technology procurement role. I am not a technical person. I have no technical skills. Like, I am not a software engineer. I'm none of that, right? But yeah, I began as a buyer, more like guiding people through the procurement process at this large organization, teaching them how to like buy something, right? Here's your quote. This is how you go in the system. So really learning how the process works because I had to guide people through it. Then I began to just get more and more experience with like how software contracts were structured and everything like that. Kind of saw just industry standards for like how pricing should work or whatever on the software side, right? So I just began to pick up those skills. And one day I told my manager at the time, like, hey, I'd like to do more. And she's, what do you want to do? So I was like, oh, this is what I'd like to do eventually. So I was like, I want to do those big deals. But again, putting myself out there, right? Like, I had no experience with any of that, but I just said, I want to learn and I want to do it. So my VP there actually took me under his wing and sat me through meetings, and I learned so much. And yeah, really ended up helping build like a vendor management function there. And that's, I guess, where my first career dilemma came up. The fact that I felt indebted to that coach because he mentored me so much. So I felt like I had to be loyal, even though I knew I was being underpaid based on the skills I had acquired at that point. Not to be braggy, but let's be braggy because that's how we get paid. I picked up a tip actually from Claire. You spoke at a Power to Fly event for free that I attended for free. I don't know if you got paid, but I attended for free, right? Like a free event. And you mentioned something about saving everything where you've contributed to your team, added value in a folder, and using that to negotiate for a salary increase, like so that you have the facts, right? So I gathered all my facts for some time because that salary needle wasn't moving. And I had a really upfront conversation like, hey, I've done this, I've learned that, here's where I am, and this is what I'm capable of doing. So it's really like that full story, right? This is why I'm not happy with my salary because I know I'm worth more, and negotiating for that. So that was the first time I got like a pretty decent salary increase. When I started, I was making, keep in mind, LA, right? Expensive place to live. I was making 22 bucks an hour with a college degree. Maybe not too much experience, but it wasn't really enough. And then I negotiated my way into 65,000, then 75, then 90, and then that's where I tapped out based on that company, and it just wasn't moving beyond that. So I was like, you know what, like enough, right? So I started my job search while I was employed, so like probably some of you, and just yeah, thinking, you know what, I have nothing to lose, right? Like, I can put myself out there, take my time, get picky, and figure out what really aligns for me, right? Like what has improved benefits and whatnot. Because where I was, it was a very like old school type of company, large enterprise. So it was very, I wanted something that was more flexible and more accommodating to me as a young mom, like of a younger generation, right, than the other folks that were there. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to check out tech. So I started applying to a couple of tech jobs, even though, again, I had no engineering or any of that experience. I just knew it from the sourcing side. And I ended up actually at a fintech. Yeah, without sharing too much, it was an increase of, I think, 40% in my salary. And I had additional benefits like working from home, right? I didn't have to worry about commuting or gas and LA traffic, which, if you guys are familiar, it's not the best. So, yeah, so then I worked there for a year. I had a really great manager, got promoted a year in, again, because I advocated for myself. So it's like whether you're at a job or you're between jobs, like always be your best advocate because nobody's going to believe in you more than you believe in you. Right. So always have like ready examples of how you've solved problems, how you add value, right? Whether it's through like traditional means, hey, I have this degree, right? Or whether it's, hey, I actually had an experience similar to this in a different industry, but I think it fits the situation here. So just don't sell yourself short. Um, and talk with your managers, like advocate for yourself constantly. So I always set up a weekly with my manager, set it for 30 minutes. Whether I use that up or not, I have the time, right? So I use that time to highlight my wins, seek advice, or like talk comp. Like you have that standing time so you know when you're going to talk to them next. You don't need to have that additional stress of when can I talk to them or how should I word it. You have that time set and reserved and you can use it pretty much as you wish. So that's, I think, one of my biggest tips, to give yourself the space to advocate for yourself at a current job. So yeah, I did that, highlighted some wins, got promoted, and then a year after that, which is around now, I started looking again just because the culture was like shifting in a way that I wasn't too happy with. And I just landed another position with another tech company and increased my pay again, another 25,000. So I'm like, I can do this. You can do this. I did not have the traditional background. I don't have the engineering degrees that a lot of these tech companies seek for their sourcing managers. It's just, yeah, me rooting for me. And like every win that I have, I highlight. And we have to do that. And I think a lot of the time as women, society tells us like, hey, just keep quiet and be really nice and things will align for you, but that is not it. And men don't work that way, so we shouldn't either. If we want to get paid, we need to highlight ourselves, advocate for ourselves, equip ourselves with all the tools. Ladies get paid. I know, Claire, you have several courses, and you speak at so many free events, so like the resources are out there. And I think as long as we use that, like we can stand a chance. And it's so hard to, when you think about it, to negotiate against like a big company. They've got an HR department to help your manager argue back why you don't deserve something. But you have to be sure in yourself, have that confidence, and know what value you bring. Just because your manager doesn't see it doesn't mean you don't have that value. So if it's time to go, and always be loyal to yourself, right? Nobody's going to pay your bills but you. So yeah, stay strong.
Love it. I love it. I want to talk to you now after. I feel like I should have you come along and to all my salary negotiation classes. And no, because people, it's like you learn this stuff, but unless you see it in action, you hear somebody's story who can demonstrate they actually have done these things, that to me gives people more confidence. The root of the word confidence is to trust, literally, like in Latin.
Mhm.
And if you can't yet trust yourself, like trust Bernice, trust your story that you did it. And I'm seeing people here preached, wow, amazing, good for you, damn. Yeah, okay, here we go. And I also think there were a lot of lessons in your story, even just in you realizing that social work was going to put an additional emotional burden on you. You've been very attuned to the environment in which you thrive, that it's not just like the function of the job or the paycheck that it affords you, but like, where are you doing it? Who are you doing it with? All of those
Mhm.
things count. Does anyone have any questions before we jump into breakouts? If you want to stick around and do breakouts, we would love that. But if not, Thank you for your time this morning. You're awesome. I'm so inspired by you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, feel free to find me on LinkedIn, my first and last name. And yeah, and I'm gonna drop because my very needy dog is now biting my sleeve because he wants to go outside.
Oh, okay. Good reason. Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for having me,
All right. Good luck.
guys.